I'll actually start off the questioning. So my question is to Matt. So Matt, you mentioned in your remarks about using a combination of long and shorts to reduce volatility in the portfolio. Perhaps you could give us an example of something that you're currently doing in your portfolio.
Absolutely. So you're always trying to find a balance of longs and shorts for two reasons. To make money off both the longs and the shorts, keep your systemic risk down, your exposure to equities. And so it's a constant, sure, they're not hedges, they're more like Texas hedges. And so one we have on right now is we sort of obviously recognized at the start of the year there's a bit of a rotation, perhaps brewing or ongoing or starting from bonds into equities, maybe a little short-term uptick in interest rates. We looked last year in the States and saw obviously financials had a big move. And we look at the insurance companies in the United States that are sort of, they've had a nice move last year, but they trade at 80% of book, about 8 times earnings. 2 we own are MetLife and Hartford Insurance Company. So we have that on the long side. That gives us a little equity kicker. It's also 2 companies on the balance sheet that would actually benefit a little more than the financial companies if there is any kind of short-term move upwards in interest rates. And on the short side, let's just say maybe the offset there is a couple of Canadian banks. Just they're all kind of the same, so I don't need to mention the names, but I've got 2 of them on the short side.
Okay, great. Thanks, Matt. So we'll just open it up to questions. So Laney.
Give us your name, too. This is your first name.
My name is Richard. So I just have a question with regards to your theory. It seems to me there's nothing really stopping the Fed from printing lots of money and just having a tax holiday for all citizens. And that gets rid of your entitlement problem, it gets rid of your debt problem, and everybody becomes equally poor. Why wouldn't they do that? It seems to fit into with the sort of philosophy that they seem to be heading towards.
Well, your last line was the operative, equally poor. The Federal Reserve is different than Japan in that it's an independent central bank. And as skeptical as we can be of central bankers, none of them want to repeat the 70s. And when inflation starts getting back, and by the way, inflation is, they'll start mouthing words at 2.5% or 3%, and they'll stamp their feet at 4%. They won't really do anything probably to 5 or 6, but they're not going to let us get to 10 or 12. They will start saying, no, we're going to have to channel our inner vocler, and because
that would solve their problem.
it's not there. That the deficit. Okay, you've got to read Bernanke's speeches. He's very clear that the problem is not the Federal Reserve. The problem is the U.S. government and our fiscal deficit. The problem is our inability and our unwillingness to balance the budget. And he can only do so much. And he talks about the fact that his partner, i.e. the U.S. government, is not pulling their share of the boat. And at some point, they're just simply going to have to say, guys, we've done all we can, and you guys are going to be the ones that have to do something. Now, in Japan, the government has said, we're going to change the entire rules because they don't have an FOMC that has 12 people appointed to their board from regional banks. And those regional banks are run by regional boards of governors. And those regional boards of governors come from local citizens. And those local citizens who are running the utilities and a bank and a manufacturing company, their interest is not in getting rid of all the debt. Their interest is in preserving the system. Preserving the system is not letting it get to 10, 15, 20% inflation. Now, theoretically, that's fine. 4% inflation for a long time really whacks a lot of the debt out. You get 6% nominal growth with 4% inflation, and if you can get your deficit under 2 or 3%, you can in short order being 7, 8, 10 years, really bring debt to GDP down to what looks like a really good level. You think you're being, now you've destroyed the value of your buying power relative to other currencies, but you don't have to destroy the country to do that. These guys aren't stupid. They're just not as convinced that that 3 or 4% at the end of the day will be a problem. They're willing to do that. They're willing to. That's the experiment they're performing on our body. But they know that they can't cut off the limb. They can't let it go to 10. The Japanese don't know that. By the way, the Japanese want to see their currency at 115, 175, and 200. We don't want to. Yes.
Yes, John. Thank you. I've always enjoyed your letters.
Thank you.
But one thing when I look at that.
You heard the but? Yeah,
oh, sorry.
ahead.
My name is George.
Hi.
You, for example, showed a bunch of charts that compared the debts and deficits of different countries. Now, for example, when U.S. debt is shown, does that include federal and state debt? Because by contrast, Greece is pretty well a unitary state.
Right.
They don't have a bunch of states all issuing additional debts and deficits.
No, it never includes the states because they're assumed to run on their own operative budgets. And the states, by and large, 40 of them, 45 of them are probably sustainable. It's a state. It's some of the big states like Illinois, New Jersey, New York, California.
Which is the same situation Canada, Ontario, Quebec.
Yeah.
Are running massive deficits. So even though our federal government looks like a hero,
Yeah.
we are.
Well, we don't even have that.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, John. Just a quick question for you. I was wondering if you could elaborate on Japan a little bit. So specifically, the debt and demographic problems are coming to a head pretty quickly here. And I was wondering what you think the outcomes may be, and what do you think the solution could be for their problems?
Well, I mean, you're going to be able to buy a Lexus cheaper than you can buy a Kia. Your Panasonic TV, your Sony TV is going to be a lot cheaper than your Samsung and your LG. It's not going to make Korea happy, but that's what they're intending to do. That will bring them back to a very positive trade balance. They're going to turn that trade balance into helping solve their debt after they've reduced the value of their debt by half by taking the yen to 175 or 200. The question will be, can they stop at that point? And they'll try to stop at some point. By the way, positive trade balances it helps increase their tax takes, helps balance their budget. That's where that clearly has to be what they're trying to do. They clearly believe they can grow their way out of it if they can take the yen to half of what it is. There's no other rational way to interpret what they're doing. They can't, by the way, stand up and say, hey, we want the yen to fall in half. Because if they did that, if you're a thinking housewife, Mrs. Yamamoto, she's not going to go, oh, wait, you're going to take it in value in half? I think I'm going to turn all of my yen into dollars or, Korean won. Because how many of you trade foreign currencies? Have you ever noticed at night there's a spike? You know when that is? It's after dinner in Japan. Seriously. They all trade. They're traders. They know what to do when they think the yen's, they understand carry trade. And if you just come up and you stood waving, that's why you're going to get continued repetitions from their prime ministers. That we heard it again today. 95 or 100 is probably the right price for the yen. Bullshit. They can't say 125 because they'd all run out and they'd short the yen themselves and they'd drive it to 125. So that you're going to hear for the next 5 to 7 years, 5 or 10 points on the yen from where we are today is probably about the right price. So it's really not worth you going out and going through all the hassle of hedging your currency today. Just keep your money in Japanese bonds. don't sell. They can never admit the game's up. It's like, what was the minister, was it Van Rompuy, that said, well, I had to lie over in Europe? When they clearly caught him lying on camera? And he said, well, sometimes you just have to lie. By the way, I get to have lunch with him in May, or a dinner. That was, somebody wanted me to come speak in Amsterdam, and that was part of my price. Was that I wanted to sit and talk to this guy, and because I mean he's a European leader. I want to try to. Where's your head, guy? Off the record here. I want to get a clue because okay, just between us guys. I know you got a lie to the rest of it, but what's the real truth? So we'll see. But Japan, the people that get screwed in Japan are not the big companies. Not even the shareholders of the stocks. It's going to be pension holders, bond holders. Their currency costs their energy cost is going to go up. Their imported food costs, anything that gets imported goes up. And so their lifestyles are going to go down, and that's who's going to get impacted. But that's the only way they've got out of it. They're in a very sad situation. The technical term that we use in Texas is they're screwed.